Good morning. I'm Stas Margaronis, and this is the Propeller Club of Northern California. And our guest is Sam Levens, who is with the International Transport Workers Federation. And she is going to be speaking about the impact of the Jones Act waivers, and particularly on the foreign crews that have been taking Jones Act trade materials around the coastal trade since the Trump administration provided the waiver several months ago. So I am going to start as I normally do with doing the introductions. And then we're going to have Peter Olney from the retired ILWU organizing director, who is going to provide an introduction. And then we're going to have Sam speak. So if you're not muted, would you please mute yourself so that everybody can hear everybody as they go along? I will start with Todd. Good morning, Todd Crawshaw.
Good morning. Crosser Design is our business, digital media company, and web hosting.
Thank you very much. Sam, you want to introduce yourself?
Sure. Hi, I'm Sam Levens. I'm the International Transport Workers Federation, Northern California inspector, and I'll talk a little bit more about that later. I'm also a member of the Inland Boatmen's Union, ILWU, which I haven't figured out how to change that on my little screen thing here. So that's also my union.
Todd can help you with that one on later. We have Carrie Dahl. If you are there, we would like to introduce you. If you can come on, Carrie, are you there?
I am, Stas. Good morning, everybody. This is Carrie Dahl, ILW Local 10.
And we are very privileged to have Mr. Dahl here because he's a big labor celebrity, and he doesn't usually get out to the provinces to meet with people, like ourselves. So we're very glad to have you with us, Carrie.
Thank you, Stas. Thank you. Great to see you.
Okay. Darren Shems. Darren, good morning.
Hello. It's been a while. My name is Darren. I work for Storm Geo. I'm one of the senior route analysts, and I'm also one of the internal audit leaders for ISO.
And Darren, there is a big typhoon in the Western Pacific. Can you tell us a little bit about what's going on with that?
Yep. So there's been some notices that MSA's put out, as a Chinese authority that's of some concern, where they're saying, oh, if you can't enter the channel by, what was it, 6 or 9Z today? I forget what the cutoff was. They were saying nobody's to transit Taiwan Strait and putting out all these advisories to mariners. Technically, that which ones it's applicable for is in question, of course, whether if it's a Chinese flagged or depending on what the port rotation is, I suppose. But it kind of smells of what happened before with the Zambales province fees west of Luzon, but we'll see. So yeah, lots of preventative measures being taken. Our plate's pretty full. But that regional service takes place with the 21Z update, so I have some time. So this is my little cathartic exhale before we get down to it.
Okay. Darren, what's the projected speed on this typhoon?
I don't have I could pull up the data, but you're talking about speed of advance?
Well, what's the velocity? I saw that it was one of the highest in recorded memory, but that might have been somebody's.
Yeah, I don't know about that. The expanse of it is kind of the main concern, right? The gale sectors and the radius. Let me pull up the latest one. Okay. So right now, go back down. Come on. Okay, so max we've got 105 knots. But yeah, I mean, again, there's been worse, there's been bigger, there's been
Okay.
stronger. It's
All
just,
right.
it's just the season kind of a thing. Typical track. I guess the silver lining is you're not talking about a sharp northeast curve, uh, towards South of Korea or Japan, and then you get these things and they go extra tropical and just explode in uh, the radius and impacts a lot more transocean vessels. So I guess seasonally, you could say it's kind of run of the mill as far as how we manage it with speed adjustments as needed. And but that MSA announcement that came out a couple days ago is an interesting thing coming from China as far as if you were proceeding towards like Fujian or north of Taiwan, ports of call, even Kaohsiung. But I mean, I've been in that situation where you've got your pilots that get cut off by a certain period of time. In 2002, there was one where for whatever reason we couldn't reduce RPMs, so we're just spinning donuts out there while everybody's getting set up for anchorage, and we had a pilot cut off and barely got in. Doubled up all the lines, of course, and CT winches and stuff, and rode it out. But it was hair raising, just doing collision avoidance, hoping that we could get in. But most everybody by now is going to be set up with where they need to be. I mean, maybe some last minute adjustments here and there. So it's just going to be kind of writing it out, monitoring the updates, and then for those that are going to be underway and passing east, it's just getting rid of those enhanced southerly conditions, the more dangerous side of this typhoon. But yeah, I mean, this is the time of the year, so
Yeah. Okay.
yeah.
So no huge danger to shipping.
Oh, absolutely there is. No,
Okay.
it's definitely I mean, it's in the context of me doing this for many, many, many years. I mean, I say that it's kind of run of the mill, but no, it's absolutely a dangerous system for sure. I wanted to see the damage done. I haven't had a chance to see how Saipan fared with this. I think Guam was more on the southern end of it, maybe not as bad. But I was kind of worried, going back on the 6th, how I was going to look going over Mariana Islands, but been pretty consistent as far as trajectory goes. So forecast confidence has been pretty solid. But yeah, after we have landfall, 11th p.m., 12th a.m. local, we'll have the residual conditions that dissipate off pretty quick, and everybody should be back underway by 12th a.m., I would assume, at the latest. But
Okay.
yeah, I mean, you have lots of options and contingencies to consider. But fortunately, when you look at systems like this, you have pretty good probability as far as what the speed of advance is going to be in the track. But when you have those ones that kind of stall out, I think that becomes a much bigger issue when you talk more prolonged drifting, or when you have some drastic change in the trajectory of the storm.
Very good. Okay. Thank you very much, Darren. Appreciate
Sure.
that.
Put me on the spot, huh?
Yeah, why not? That's what we're here for.
Yeah, I guess with auditing I should be used to that anyway, but
Okay. Take care. I have Elizabeth, Local 56. Elizabeth, do you want to identify yourself?
Hi. So Elizabeth from Local 56. We do environmental hazmat here in SoCal. I'm actually right now at work and just wanted to say hi.
Okay. Elizabeth, welcome. Thank you for joining us. I have Jeff Engels. Jeff, do you want to introduce yourself? Jeff Engels. Going once, going twice.
Hello.
Hello, Jeff. Good morning.
The weather in Seattle's great. Is that what you were asking?
No.
No. We're recovering from the World Cup whirlwind.
Oh.
Anyway, my name is Jeff Engels. I'm retired ITF coordinator inspector after 20 years doing that. I'm 3 years into retirement. Peter caught me off guard because I normally am just into hobbies and traveling and relaxing, but maybe I could get a little stress out of this meeting.
No, okay. Thank you very much for being with us. And Kevin Policarpo.
Good morning, everyone. My name is Kevin Policarpo. I'm Mr. Margaronis' research assistant.
Thank you, Kevin. Peter Olney. Peter, good morning.
Morning, Stas. Peter Olney, retired organizing director, ILWU.
Thank you for being with us. I just saw that we have the AI keeps creeping in here, so I just knocked it off. That's why I was hesitating. Rich Rockwood. Rich, good morning.
Good morning. My name is Rich Rockwood, retired MEBA chief engineer.
And for those of us who do not know what MEBA is, would you give us the acronym, explain the acronym?
Marine Engineers Beneficial Association. So,
Rich, where are you located?
Vacaville, California.
Oh, well, you're close by us.
Yes, I am.
Welcome. Welcome.
Thank you.
Okay. Robert Gumpert.
Yeah, I'm Robert Gumpert. I'm a photographer. That's working on a project around the water.
And you've been photographing longshore workers, right?
No, I've been photographing seafarers.
Oh, right. Seafarers. Got it. And no longshoremen?
Not yet.
What's wrong with the longshoremen?
You'd have to ask them.
Uh-oh. Only? We have to have a conversation about this. Robert, welcome, and thank you for being with us. Okay, I just saw somebody else.
Mike Vera.
Mike Vera, thank you. Mike.
Good morning, everybody. Michael Vera here. I am the patrolman for the Inland Boatmen's Union here in Southern California. I also chair the E-Board, and I'm a captain for Foss Maritime Company.
Very good. Welcome, and thank you for joining us, Mike.
Thanks for having me.
Okay. Did I get everybody, Todd?
Yeah, I think that's everybody.
Okay, very good.
Oh, someone just Andrew White is coming in.
Oh, okay. Let's get Andrew in. Andrew, do you want to introduce yourself? Andrew White, you just came in. Andrew, I can see you're here and you're muted. Okay. Going once, going twice. All right. I want to start by saying that we came on this discussion about the Jones Act waiver when the Propeller Club had its Maritime Day presentations in May, and Sam actually was participating in that, and Robert Wilkins had been discussing the plight of mariners that were stranded in the Strait of Hormuz. And then we had Tori Presti from National Shipping talking a little bit about the impact to the industry from the waivers. And subsequent to that, Sam and I had a discussion, and she had referenced in our May presentation that there was a situation with those mariners who had been transporting their foreign flag on the foreign flag vessels, those mariners who were now in the U.S. trades, who might not have a visa, who might be stuck on the ship for an extended period of time, and what happens to them. And I had a conversation with somebody the other day, and they hadn't even thought that, that was going to be an issue. I want to say a couple of things. I talked to Jennifer Carpenter, who is the president of the American Waterways Operators, and she has been very vocal on the subject of the Jones Act waiver. A lot of the people who are in the inland waterways trades are affected by this, could be affected by this. We've seen some impacts, but the real concern that we have is that this seems to be another attack on labor. We have directly, I believe, 100,000 people who work in the maritime trades, and indirectly, that number is substantially higher. They are in the inland waterways. They're inland boatmen, like some of our participants today. They're on ocean-going vessels such as Matson and Pescia's lines. They are people that work in shipyards and ship repair that are supported by the Jones Act. The Jones Act has been a target of right-wing extremists for some time, and it was in the Project 2025 agenda of the Heritage Foundation. And there was a lot of concern when the second waiver came out that this might be a run-up to eliminating the Jones Act on a de facto basis. And the reason that we're concerned about this is that the only way that we have a strong maritime industry in the U.S. is if we support that industry. The critics, including the Project 2025 people, have said, well, we're not doing a really good job and we should get rid of the Jones Act. Jennifer Carpenter told me that one of the first areas of benefit when the waiver came into effect was not in lowering gasoline prices, which was the intended impact by the administration, but for oil companies who could cut the cost of transporting oil and gas. And she referenced a meeting that a oil company executive had on a call, and he was saying that they were making a lot of money on this and doing very well. You will have seen in the media that a Chinese flag vessel also took advantage of the situation to carry asphalt, which, to my knowledge, has nothing to do with lowering gasoline prices. And finally, gasoline prices did not go down as a result of the Jones Act waiver. So that is the situation we have. We're hearing that that waiver is not going to be extended when it terminates in August, but we don't know that for sure. And as we now know, we're back at war with Iran, so oil and gasoline prices are already on the way up. So without further ado, I'm going to now turn this over to Peter Olney, who is going to introduce Sam Levens. Peter, good morning again, and thank you very much for being with us.
Great. Thank you, Stas. Samantha Levens is currently the Northern California International Transport Workers Federation inspector. They got their start in the maritime industry working on historic tall ships. Sailing on the East Coast and Caribbean, they worked restoring original and reproduction ships, as well as working with youth aboard sail training vessels. This brought them to San Francisco, where they worked for the San Francisco National Maritime Historic Park as a sail training instructor and doing historic restoration. Following their time at the park, Sam joined the Inland Boatmen's Union of the Pacific and began working as a deckhand on the San Francisco Bay Ferry system. For the next 20 years, Sam worked aboard the ferry, while also becoming increasingly involved with their union. They were elected a shop steward, executive board member, and convention delegate for many years. They were also recruited to assist their international union, the ILWU, on several organizing campaigns over the years. In 2020, Sam was hired as the ITF inspector for Northern California, joining 4 other ILWU-based ITF inspectors on the U.S. West Coast. Since taking on their role as ITF inspector, Sam has attended the ITF induction training in London, ILO's Maritime Labor Convention training in Turin, Italy, and assisted in training other ITF inspectors in India, Puerto Rico, and Canada. Sam will be talking about some weighty and important topics today regarding the Jones Act. I look forward to doing some learning. But for me, Sam is an organizer's organizer. Sam brought workers from Hornbrower, Alcatraz tours to us at the International Union headquarters 20 years ago. They were non-union. Sam persisted in working with our organizing department and bringing these workers successfully into the IBU. I salute Sam and look forward to this presentation. Sam Levens.
Thanks, Peter. I know Peter was a mentor to a couple of people on this call, so I really appreciate the introduction. So thank you. So yeah, I've been ITF inspector now for the last 6 years. Shout out to Jeff Engels, who was my coordinator at the beginning. And so hopefully he'll have some stuff to add later on in the call. I do want to talk briefly about what the ITF is and what the ITF inspectors do, for those of you who aren't familiar. So the ITF is the International Transport Workers Federation, and it's an international federation of trade unions in transportation industries. Specifically, I work with the dock worker and seafarer section. So these are dock worker and seafarer unions from around the world. So we're not just talking about US-based maritime unions. We're talking about unions from Japan, India, Europe, and they all work together in this federation in order to support each other for the benefit of their members, the benefit of international seafarers. One of the most important things that we do is coordinate an inspector network, and the inspector network has roughly about 150 inspectors around the world in most major ports. These inspectors are part of their unions. Just, I'm a member of the ILWU. We have our inspectors in other countries working through their unions and their ports, going on board international ships and conducting labor inspections. And so when we go on board ships, we're looking for, we're essentially, in union terminology, the international seafarer's shop steward or business agent. So we're doing that sort of work, going on board, looking at wage accounts, looking at working conditions, anything, surrounding the working life of the seafarer. And our specific purview is flag of convenience vessels. I'm sure most people on this call know FOC, what FOCs stand for, but just briefly, flag of convenience is when the ownership of the company is in a different location than where the ship is registered, which tends to be the case for most ships nowadays. You'll have a company based in Germany, and then, the ship is flagged or registered in Panama or the Marshall Islands. And so those are the vessels that we're inspecting. We don't inspect national flag vessels. We don't inspect U.S. flag. We don't, even if it's a legitimate German or, Indian flag vessel, we don't inspect those. We do the FOC vessels. And so those are going to be the ones that I'm talking about in terms of the Jones Act waiver. My territory is Northern California. So I'm conducting these inspections at the Port of Oakland, Sacramento, Stockton. Recently we've seen, because of the Jones Act waiver, a huge uptick in the number of particularly oil tankers, foreign flag oil tankers coming into the Bay Area. And I'll show you an image in a little bit that sort of maps out that data of, how many vessels are coming into the Bay actually in comparison to other parts of the US. Before I get into that, though, I do want to speak briefly about the Strait of Hormuz, because a lot of this kind of goes back to that and the conflict and the ongoing on-again, off-again conflict in the Strait. Currently, there's 11,000 seafarers that are still stranded and trapped in the Strait of Hormuz. And the Trump administration is using this situation as a pretext for waiving the Jones Act, and to bring in more fuel, more gas, into the U.S. and to allow for the free flow of gasoline. this conflict in Iran is completely self-made by the U.S. and and the people always both here in the U.S. that are being affected by this Jones Act waiver and also in the Strait of Hormuz are completely innocent civilian seafarers, and these people are trapped in the strait. The ITF has received over 2,000 requests for assistance. I'm sure it's higher. That's a number from a couple of weeks ago. And we've been assisting people, not myself personally, but our inspector, specifically our inspector who's based for the Middle East, has been assisting the seafarers to be repatriated. We've been able to successfully help at least 500. I'm sure that it's more now. The ILO has been saying that they're going to assist with repatriations, but that has actually not occurred yet because of ongoing conflict in the region. Seafarers have every right to refuse to sail into a war zone, conflict zone. And so we've been assisting seafarers who aren't even in the strait, but maybe are adjacent to or ordered, who are concerned about traveling into those regions to assist them going home with pay, so that way they're not penalized for exercising their right to repatriation. And so that's what's going on in the strait. And I wanted to bring that up because it directly affects what's happening here. And so we had the initial Jones Act waiver on March 17th. And it was a 90-day waiver. And then when that was about to expire, Trump extended it. So the current waiver extends through August 16th. So that's the drop dead date of the current waiver. And the way this is working is, any vessel, it's an open waiver. So prior, a lot of the Jones Act waivers were very specific. The vessel itself had to apply for the waiver. This is a blanket waiver. So any vessel can take advantage of this, and they don't have to report to the Maritime Administration until after they've already discharged their cargo. And so MARAD is keeping a list, an updated list of vessels that are taking advantage of the waiver. However, we don't have the current information of who's trading at the moment, which is kind of, if I can be honest, is kind of wild to me that we have ships trading in our coast that are not reporting to MARAD until after they discharge their cargo and are some of them already out of the country. They have to report within 10 days of discharge. And so, this is, it's a blanket waiver. Any vessel can come and take advantage of this. The commodities that I've seen personally in the Bay Area, I know there's been a lot of talk of liquid natural gas. I have not seen that commodity. I've seen primarily crude, diesel, jet fuel, and other refined oil products. And so that's what I've been seeing primarily coming into the Bay. And I think now is probably a good time to put up the image. I know I have an image that I sent Stas and Todd. So this is actually from the Cato Institute. Boo. We don't like the Cato Institute, but this image is actually based from all the public data that's been reported currently to MARAD. And so I did want to share it because it's a good visual. And so you can kind of see the various types of cargo, and primarily where they're trading into. And but for our discussion today, where I do want to focus on is, do you see that big, thick series of lines between LA and San Francisco? So that is, tons of movements of vessels, sometimes the same vessels, sometimes different vessels between LA and the Bay. And so what they're doing is they're moving relatively small amounts of fuel between LA and San Francisco. So they're going LA, they're going El Segundo, and then they're going into Martinez, Richmond. We currently have a ton of tankers at anchor. And so what's also happening is you're having a lot of tankers taking on fuel and then storing them on board at the anchorage. And so there's just a lot of flow of fuel back and forth between these locations. And so, so just keep that in mind. and maybe we can go back to the slide. It's easier for me to talk when I can see everybody. Oh, there you all are. Okay, cool. And cool. So I kind of want you guys to keep that slide in mind when I talk about this other issue facing the seafarers on board these foreign flag vessels. So if you're a seafarer, if you're an international seafarer, you're entitled to what's called a C1D visa. And so a C1D visa is it's a crew member visa. It gives you a right to enter the US, fly into the US, fly out of the US, and also enter on a cargo ship. And usually those visas are issued on a 6 or 10-year basis. It depends on what country you're getting it from. And while you have the US visa, once you enter the US, whether it's through the airport or on a ship, you'll be cleared by customs, and they'll give you a 29-day shore pass. And that 29-day shore pass allows you to go ashore, it allows you to fly home. If there's a repatriation, allows you to go back through the airport. It also makes it a lot easier to go ashore to seek medical care. And so these, crew visas and shore passes are, they're issued for 29 days. And prior to the current administration, there is a rule under CBP that says that, these shore passes, they're, once they expire, you're technically supposed to be detained on board the vessel. There's wiggle room on that where the crew member can apply for what's called parole from customs. And through that parole process, what will happen is they'll be issued almost like an armed guard or a guard that can escort them either to the airport or to the hospital or to, a doctor's visit if their shore pass is expired. So if they're in the country past their 29 days, they can apply for parole from customs, and then customs will assign them or have the agent assign them an escort. And then if there's an emergency issue, they need to fly home, they need to go to the doctor, they can do that, right? Customs, since the new administration came in, has been much more strict about issuing these paroles. And so they have language in their policy book that says that they don't have to issue parole unless it's considered an urgent humanitarian need. And we've been quoted this from Customs. I've met with Customs about this, and they've been very adamant that they are not doing any repatriations, any crew repatriation parole requests unless it's an urgent humanitarian need, which basically means the seafarer has to be on their deathbed or one of their family members has to be on their deathbed. They are not just doing regular run-of-the-mill repatriations. They're not allowing crew members to go to the doctor unless they can prove that it is an urgent humanitarian issue. And so we've had crew members with, dental issues, with issues with like bowel issue, all kinds of stuff that, maybe it's serious, maybe it's not. They don't know because they haven't been to a doctor yet. And so you have customs officials who are not doctors making determinations on what is an urgent humanitarian need for these seafarers. And this was an issue last year at the start of the new administration where they started being much more strict about allowing these repatriations. And I did talk to Stas about this at the beginning of last year, and I do believe it's gotten a little better because the agents and the medical personnel that deal with the vessels have gotten a little bit better of how, they've gotten a little better at describing the issue to customs in order to move along some of these requests. But it's still a huge problem. And I'm not going to say it's not because, you still have issues where someone might be denied multiple times to go to the doctor. Now you bring in the Jones Act and think about those ships going back and forth between LA and San Francisco. Normally you'll have a ship in port for maybe, a lot of these ships are only in port for a couple of days. Maybe they'll be in the US for like a week, 2 weeks max. And then they'll go foreign. Once the ship goes foreign, they can come back into the US and then they'll get reissued a new shore pass. But if you have a ship traveling back and forth between LA and San Francisco, which a lot of these vessels have been since the start of this waiver, all of a sudden you're trading within the US territory for, months and weeks. And these people are, then after 29 days, your shore pass is expired. So you have a whole group of seafarers who are now being detained on their ship. They can't get off. They can't have shore leave. If there's a medical issue, it's a huge bureaucratic problem trying to get them off the ship to the doctor. And it's just it's a recipe for disaster. And I've seen now a couple of cases where we've had crew members from certain nationalities that can't even get U.S. visas transporting some of this fuel. I had a whole crew of Burmese seafarers who, because of what's going on with their government, their nationality is on a list from the Trump administration where they can't get U.S. visas at all. But, we're perfectly happy to have them transport our fuel back and forth between LA and San Francisco. And so none of these crew members had U.S. visas to begin with. And so if there's an injury, if there's a repatriation, maybe they've been on the ship for 9 months and they're supposed to go home. The company is making money transporting fuel. They're not sending them home. And so we've had to put pressure on the company to either go to Canada or Mexico to either repatriate them in this other country or to go there to go foreign. So that way, when they come back to the United States, they can renew that 29-day shore pass. And so this is what we've been doing to assist the seafarers who are in this situation, this sort of, bureaucratic hellscape that's been created by our government, where they're perfectly happy to make money off the backs of these people who are making less than a quarter of the amount of money that a U.S. seafarer would make, and reaping huge profits for the oil and gas industry and justifying it by saying that oil prices are going to go down when they're not. And so do we really want an underclass of people transporting our fuel within this country? I mean, we seem to be happy to do that. Sorry, now I'm going to go on a rant, but we seem to be happy to do that with our food products. Maybe, it's okay to do that with our fuel now, but, we have to understand that this is the real situation that's happening with these crew members. I'm dealing with a case right now. As soon as I get off this call, I'm in my car. I'm going to go to a ship right now where there was a chief officer who, had a knee injury, and he was denied shore leave. He was denied the ability to go ashore in LA because of cost. Actually, he still had his shore pass. His shore pass was still valid. He was denied the ability to go to the doctor in LA because they didn't want to spend the money getting him a launch from LA Harbor into the doctor. So they kept him on board. They actually flew in his relief because they knew that he was injured, that he had this knee injury. He ended up in the Bay. His shore pass expired. He applied to customs twice, was denied both times to go to the doctor here in the Bay. And then they finally were able to get him approved on a parole request to fly home to Bulgaria, which is where he's from. And this is a Jones Act waiver ship it's now been in the Bay. I mean, I have to look it up, but maybe it's been back and forth between LA and the Bay, and then in the Bay itself for like 2 or 3 months now. It's been here for a very long time. There's a bosun on that ship that's been on board for 1 year and can't be repatriated because of customs. They won't repatriate him because it's not considered an urgent humanitarian need for him to be over contract. The company has flew in his relief. So his relief is on board and the bosun's not working, apparently. I haven't been on the ship yet. I'm going today. And then there's another person on board who's also complaining about a medical issue. So, these are sort of the real life effects of this waiver on rank and file international crew members. And I know a lot of the rhetoric around the Jones Act isn't like national security, but I personally, I reject that framing. I think that I take a more worker-centered framing. A lot of the work I do is supporting international seafarers. I don't see them inherently as a threat to the livelihood of U.S. seafarers. We have to work together. What the Jones Act does in terms of wages is it uplifts wages for seafarers internationally. So if the Jones Act is one of the best international cabotage laws in the world, and we're not the only country to have a similar cabotage law. In India, you can't transport cargo between 2 Indian ports without using an Indian flag ship with an Indian crew. So we're not unique in that, but we do have some of the highest wages and some of the best conditions for seafarers globally. If you were to get rid of the Jones Act, it would be way easier for these companies to then push down the wages of seafarers across the board. And so it's imperative for us to fight to keep the Jones Act, not just because of national security issues, but because it uplifts the wages and conditions for seafarers globally. I don't know how much more time do I have?
Why don't you do your summation at this point?
Okay. So obviously they can't just completely blanket get rid of the Jones Act. It has to be an act of Congress. And this is where I know Carrie Dahl wants me to talk about this. There currently is a bill. It's HR 3940, Open America's Waterways Act. That is there's always going to be a Jones Act waiver bill going through Congress, and they often die in committee, and we're hoping this one does. This one's currently, it was introduced by Representative Tom McClintock, who's a Republican, pretty terrible Republican from California, from Northern California, currently obviously up for re-election against, and this is where I don't know too much about this person who's running against him, Democrat Michael Masuda. And so this guy, though, Tom McClintock, has, introduced, along with another Republican from Utah, the Open America Waterways Act, which would repeal the Jones Act altogether. And so I know what's happening now is like what you'll see is, I think what we're seeing is they're sort of testing the waters of what they can get away with. And then they're going to try and use this data of how many ships have taken advantage of the waiver in order to justify an eventual repeal of the Jones Act. And I also, maybe I don't want to be too much of a conspiracy theorist, but I think part of the reason why they're moving so many ships between the US and LA is that they're sort of trying to flood the market with these vessels to, increase the number of vessels that they're saying, oh, look at how many vessels took advantage of the waiver, even though they're not transporting that much more fuel in those, in that supply chain, So I think that's my conspiracy theories that they're trying to sort of just flood the zone, I guess, is what I was like, to use a Trump term. So that's my summation. I could talk a little bit more about other stuff, but maybe people have questions or.
Yeah, okay. Sam, thank you very much. Let me go back to the number of people who are stranded in the Strait of Hormuz. The figure that I saw in Bloomberg said that there's 8,000, but you've said that there's 11,000. Do we have a good figure on how many people are stranded?
The ITF said 10, and then I saw 11 today.
Okay.
But I do know that people have been getting repaid. I know that vessels had been moving out. Whenever there is a ceasefire, a few vessels will leave. And I know that people have been flying out. So I think it's kind of a fluid number.
Okay.
I can try and get a better number on that, though, for you.
Okay. So just to finish on that subject, are there still people that were stuck in the Strait of Hormuz when the war began in February who are still there right now? Do we know that?
That's my impression. I know that there have been, these are the folks that ITF is attempting to assist. One of the issues that you have to think about in that scenario is, you start running out of fuel, you start running out of water, you start running out of food. When you have that many vessels stranded in that situation, it's not just fear of being in a conflict zone. It's also, issues of, just basic maintenance of the vessel. And, so people who've been in the strait since then, they're facing a multitude of issues, right?
Okay. And we referenced a video in May with one of your colleagues who was in Spain, I believe, who was fielding a lot of, phone calls and messages. Has that situation gotten any better? Are people actually getting the minimal aid they need so they can at least subsist while all of this is going on?
So that I do recommend everyone looking up this video. It was in the Wall Street Journal. The inspector's name is Mohammed Aradechi. And he's our Middle East or Arab world in Iran. So whenever I tell people that my territory is Northern California and they go, oh, wow, that's a lot of territory to cover. That must be crazy. I tell them, well, we have a guy who covers the Arab world in Iran. So no, it's not gotten better for him. He's super stressed out all the time. He gets a million text messages every day. I went on an inspection with him. He turned his phone off for 2 hours and he turned it back on and he had like, over 150 text messages on WhatsApp or something. And I think one of the things that he talks about in that video, which is very true here with the Jones Act issue, is that like what's going on in the Strait of Hormuz, what's going on with the Jones Act waiver, it's just highlighting pre-existing inequalities and issues within the supply chain, within the shipping industry. And so he had issues in that region prior. That the region of in the Arab world was a prime hotspot for substandard shipping companies to abandon their crew. So say there was a company that was sort of a fly-by-night company, they would decide, okay, we don't want to, we've made all our profits, we want to just sort of scuttle the ship and abandon the ship. They'll leave the ship there and just leave the crew and then close out their PO box in Panama and then disappear into the night. And then you have a crew of 20 people who haven't been paid for months. And that was already happening in that region. And so what this conflict is doing is just heightening that. And it's the same thing here. We had issues getting crew off the vessels for medical issues, repatriations, and what the Jones Act waiver is doing, all it's doing is just heightening those pre-existing problems.
Okay, let's come to the U.S. trades. Do we know how many vessels have been carrying product in the trade since the waiver began?
How many vessels?
Yeah.
Hold on. Give me 1 second, because I have a spreadsheet. This is not going to be how many vessels, by the way. I believe this is going to be vessel movements.
Okay.
Because some of a lot of these are individual vessels that only did one load, but some of them have done multiple loads. So give me 1 second. 152.
Good grief. Okay. Now that's voyages or vessels?
That's voyages.
Okay.
But very few of them were the same vessel. A lot of them were different vessels. So we'd have to go through and I'd say maybe in the 125 range, maybe, or 120. Definitely over 100 vessels.
And Sam, are these primarily tankers?
Yeah. Yeah, they're almost all tankers. I know there's that one Chinese vessel that was doing the asphalt. Yeah.
Right.
But these are all the ones I've inspected are tankers.
Okay. So these guys got dispatched into the Jones Act trade to transport oil and gas, and their crew members, in many cases, did not have visas and got stuck on their ships. Is that what I heard you saying?
I think a lot of them do have visas. The problem is that the way the visa rules work is that when you come in on a U.S. visa, on a crew visa, you're issued a temporary 29-day shore pass.
Right.
And that it's only good for 29 days.
Right.
In order for that pass to be reissued, you have to go to another foreign port. You can't go out to sea. You can't go to the lightering area. You have to go to a foreign port. And so that means I'd have to go to Canada or Mexico, which are the closest. And so that's the issue. And we do see some ships, like I had a ship, like I told you, Evolved Burmese crew, who can't get visas at the moment.
Right.
So you definitely have that for sure. But I think the vast majority, you're talking about Filipino, Indian, Eastern European, they all have access to visas. And a lot of them have visas. The problem is the shore pass expiration.
And they're in many cases they've expired. Is that correct?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, after 29 days, they all expire.
And are you seeing any cases where ships are going to Canada or Mexico so that those visas can be extended?
Some of the ships have gone on their own. Good on them. They give a shit about their crew. We've had to force certain vessels to go. these vessels, even though they're in the U.S., they're still under, many of them are under, because of the flag or where the company's based, are under the Maritime Labor Convention. So they're required to repatriate their crew within 11 months. And that's a requirement under the MLC. And so we've been able to, force some of them to depart. There was one in particular that was down here where they had like 3 or 4 officers that were over contract, and then a bunch of their ratings were due to be expired within a couple of weeks, and so we were able to force them to go to Canada to repatriate them.
Okay. And in terms of repatriation and caring for the crew, is there any U.S. agency that is involved at all in this process? You mentioned Customs and Border Protection. Are they taking some role to try and protect the mariners?
No. I mean, I think I've spoken with our local customs officials, and while I do believe that they understand that this is a problem, they're all taking orders from DC. And we've been told that very explicitly, that they're getting their orders from DC. And so the customs is not in the business of assisting the crew or even thinking about the well-being of the crew. The U.S. Coast Guard, because we're not under the Maritime Labor Convention, while the Coast Guard is very empathetic to the crew, there's really nothing they can do. We've approached them about crew repatriations before and about medical issues. The only way it'll become an issue for them would be if, for example, it reduces the safe manning. So maybe you have a chief engineer or, a watch-standing officer or watch-standing crew member who's injured or can't perform their duties. In that case, the Coast Guard would step in. But at least on the ship, the case that I'm dealing with now, what the company did was they flew in their reliever. So they're meeting their safe manning requirement.
They just didn't do anything about the guy that was stuck on the ship.
Yeah, and then you have crew members who are stuck on the ship.
Right. Okay. Let me open this up for questions. Yes, Jeff, go ahead. Jeff Engels.
Yes, hello. Thanks for that report, Sam. I was just texting with Mike Vera, and maybe somebody else has answers to this. I was trying to get a handle on lost work for seagoing tug and barge companies on the West Coast, transporting between LA, San Francisco, and like Ferndale to Anchorage, Alaska. I actually did that run once with Crowley. So I'm just wondering how much work is being lost by tugs. I know we don't have a lot of U.S. flagged coastal tankers anymore, but maybe the MEBA person knows how much work is being lost, actual ships laid up, et cetera, due to this waiver. Second part of this, I think it's been answered. They're not getting into the Hawaii SF trade and the dry cargo or whatever. So I'm not sure why was this waiver limited to certain products? Does anybody know that? And then again, is anybody keeping track on actual lost work for U.S. tug and barge and U.S. merchant seamen?
Sam, do you have any information on that?
I mean, that's a huge question. I know that some of the unions, maritime unions, have been approaching their employer to ask the employer whether or not they've seen a downturn in work. I can't answer that because what I've heard back from people was that the employer was not being very forthcoming with the information, or they didn't know. A lot of them have long-term contracts is also what I've been told. And so they're just doing what they normally have been doing. And then this is sort of like extra tonnage being put on those runs in addition to, but that's sort of what I've been told. And I don't know if MEBA or anyone else has more info.
They're chartering out even U.S. flag tug companies, or could be possibly chartering out their own work to these entities. Is that possible? It is possible. I think Chevron, Exxon, any of them would do it.
I mean, all the charters, the charterers are Chevron, Phillips, yeah.
Does anybody have any information about the loss of jobs here? And Mike Vera, have you guys been following this at all? Do you have any anecdotal information?
I was telling Jeff that our only signatory in Southern California for the IBU that moves oil is Sauce Brothers, and they run a fleet of tank barges. And I believe them. They say they haven't seen really any impact in their market. I work for Foss Maritime at the El Segundo Chevron refinery, and we've seen a definitive change in the ships that are coming. And you know, whether you're going to get any kind of information from Chevron is very doubtful. But as Sam was saying, we're seeing some foreign ships that are taking small parcels of like 100,000 barrels from the Gulf states to El Segundo, or from El Segundo to Richmond for Chevron, that we've never seen before. I mean, every time we do a job and we look at all of our vessel tracking information that we get, we're getting ships that we've never seen before. One other interesting thing that we noted about a month ago that speaks to the normalization of this is we saw a Chevron foreign flagship that normally does offshore lightering take 300,000 barrels of crude from South America. They brought some Colombian product because all the Gulf state oil, the Arabian Light and the Basra, has been replaced with South American oil. This ship went to Colombia, picked up 300,000 barrels, and then they were bringing 50,000 barrels that nobody recognized. It was called Choctaw Bayou Sweet. And then we're like, what the hell is this? The ship left Colombia, went to Louisiana, picked up 50,000 barrels of the strategic oil reserve oil, and brought it to El Segundo. And I just believe that that's just an attempt of moving oil from the reserve to kind of normalize these violations of the Jones Act with these Chevron foreign tankers.
Was there any movement? Was there any trade between Louisiana and the Gulf and California by water before?
So Chevron maintains 4 domestic tankers, and yes, we're seeing them call on El Segundo with the frequency that they normally do, but you never know what goes on behind the scenes.
Okay, Michael, thank you very much for that. I think that the question here is that we don't really have a good handle on this. And normally, the people that we would go to for help would be at the Maritime Administration. And I'm not sure that they're going to be very forthcoming. Other questions?
Stas, I put in the chat a link I found.
Yes.
I was curious, comparing to when we had that waiver during Katrina, if you recall.
Right.
It was much more specifically with petroleum. I was curious, since they said something like over 659 different cargo types, I wanted to actually see it. So I finally found that link, and there's an Excel sheet that has them there. And you can, again, it's obviously multi-chemical related, and there's some fertilizers in there as well. But I'll be curious to see if more of these cargo types are taken advantage of the longer this goes on.
That's what we used to say is the $64,000 question. Mike, I've been seeing a lot of commentary from the seafarers. I think that IBU, there's clearly something going on the West Coast here, and there's obviously some movement here. Sam, you've got a link here. Do you want to discuss that? Sam, you just sent something on chat.
Oh, sorry, I was on mute. So I just dropped a link in the chat, and that's the MARAD. That's the MARAD website. You have to scroll all the way to the bottom, and it's going to have Excel spreadsheets that are dropped in there. Basically, whenever any of these vessels that's taken advantage of the waiver, when they report, they'll update this list sometimes every day or every other day. And so you have to scroll all the way to the bottom to the most recent one, and they just update them. Like, you don't need to click on all of them. So the most latest one is from July 2nd. And so if you click on that, it'll open up a PDF.
Okay.
And it has actually, if you scroll to the right of that PDF, it'll have a section that's the reason for them taking advantage of the waiver. And so they all have to put in a reason. And so some of them are, national security, blah, 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 and some of them are a little unhinged. It's kind of fun to read, actually.
Okay. Would you do me a favor? Just because I'm doing, let me see if I can. Would you email that one to me just so I've got that? If you could send me that as an email after we get finished.
Sure.
Okay.
One of them said that the Department of War made it necessary for them to transport jet fuel from New York to Martinez.
Okay. Mike, you've been so advised. This is now a national security situation, and I think that a lot of people are going to be wondering whether this is really legitimate and what the benefit really is. The bottom line, and I think that there's not much of discussion here, is it did not affect gasoline prices. So whatever was happening didn't have the effect that it was supposed to have had. So regardless of what movements are going on, the bottom line is still that gasoline prices were not affected until there was a ceasefire. And now that the ceasefire is off, the question is, where do we go from here? And I don't think anybody knows. Other questions? You want to either raise your hand or chime in? Carrie Dahl, you never a person with few words. Are there any comments you'd like to make?
Hey, thanks, Saz, and thanks so much to Sam for this presentation. It was very enlightening. I think I'm really curious about the dynamic between Los Angeles and the Bay, and I mean this really speaks to some of the direct challenges that one of the ILWU employers, CNH Sugar, has had in terms of being able to find anchorage for ships they can't get unloaded at Crockett. So, Sam, thanks so much for helping to demythologize some of this stuff, which is oftentimes very hard for us land lovers to understand.
Very good, Michael Vieira. If you have anything that comes up on your radar screen, you've got my email address. We'd certainly like to hear from the IBU on this. And any issue that seems to be raised here. Carrie's made a good point, which is that we're all kind of flying a little blind here. And from what I heard you say, you're not getting a lot of information from the employers, but it might be helpful if any snippet that comes along that you could share with us. So if you would mind doing that, I'd appreciate that.
I certainly will. We're just going to continue to try to track these shipments that we're able to at the El Segundo refinery, foreign ships moving domestically. I guess one question I had, are we aware of any support or any congressional committees or congressmen that are avidly pursuing any pushback on this waiver? And if so, how can we dive into that and get our unions and our members on board with trying to support this as well?
Michael, there's been a lot. The AMO and the AMP and the SIU have got, I think, 55 signatories in Congress, Republicans and Democrats, saying that the waiver has to come to an end. I think there's been a lot of blowback along the Mississippi and the inland waterway rivers. I will try and find a link to that and send that to you. if you look on the SIU website, better still, American Waterways Operators have been doing a lot. And I will send you, when we get off, the communications director at AMO is somebody that I know. I'll send you his email and you can communicate directly with him. And anybody else who's interested, let me know, and I can forward that to you. As a matter of fact, hold on. Let me see if I can just get in really quickly and get to, Ben Lerner. Okay, Ben Lerner is at the American Waterways Operators, and I am going to put his email address on the chat here. Let me just make sure I can do this copy and hold on. So, okay, does everybody see that? Ben Lerner is the communications director at the American Waterways Operators. He should be able to give you some direction on that. And anybody who's interested, Ben is coordinating for AWO. So that would be a good place to start. We are getting a little bit past the hour. Are there any other questions before we do a wrap up?
Not a question, Stas, but I found that statistic you were talking about with Bobby. So
Right.
it set the record for the strongest that passed over U.S. territories. That would be the Mariana Islands, and it looks like Rhoda's the one that got hit the worst. Saipan did a little better, but I think the 2,000 residents on Rhoda, like pretty much every building's, I don't know, completely destroyed, but there's damage to everything there.
And this goes to a whole other issue, which we don't have time to discuss, but sea level rise and how these bigger and bigger storms are affecting South Pacific Islands and how their future is pretty tenuous in situations like this. Yes.
I'm not going to be able to speak on that so much. Again, I
Not
take them
wanting
like
to
I
put
see
you on
them.
the spot.
No, you're not going to put me on the spot with that one, because again, it's like I don't know. It's with the sea rise, that'd be left for somebody else. But I
Yeah.
could speak on these seasonal tropical
Absolutely.
situations, and of course, we had that presentation a while back with differences in routing strategy when you have El Nino effect. But yeah, I mean, it's all just in managing your mitigation measures and your contingency measures. I'm going to go into ISO brain, but it really is just about risk management, and we can certainly do that and do. So it's just, it's kind of just like another day to me in my mind. Like, all right, what's the answer? Where's my decision points? We can get into that later.
Okay, Darren. Thank you.
All right. Bye-bye.
Bye. Okay, guys. Sam, I want to thank you very much for really giving us a presentation on an area that is getting very little attention. And you have been doing a really great job here. It's, I want to use the phrase, you're doing the Lord's work here, Sam. And it's not, it needs to be better recognized that we have a problem. I talked to a union official just the other day who said, well, but they're not American mariners. Why should I care? I said, well, you should care because the next time there's another Jones Act waiver, it could be your guys who are out and somebody replacing them in these kinds of situations. So on that note, we are going to conclude. Sam Levens has been talking to us with the International Transport Workers Federation. If you have any questions of Sam, you can also reach me via email, and I will forward that to her. This work is ongoing. We've got to hope that this Jones Act waiver is going to end on August 16th as promised. but we don't know that this is the end of this situation. So, Sam, thank you very much for your time and best wishes. Sam's put up her email in case anybody would like to follow up with her on questions that she raised. So,
thanks, Stas. Thanks for pulling this together.
okay, thank you. Thank you very much, everybody. Be well. The Propeller Club is going to have its fall events coming up in a couple of weeks. They will be out to you very soon. Thank you all for being with us today. Be well and be safe, and we will see you soon. I'm Stas Margaronis with the Propeller Club of Northern California. Good day.